Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. We have with us a very special guest, Angela McArdle, who has apparently taken over the Libertarian Party over the weekend. I had told all my friends and well-wishers, do not send me updates about what's happening with the Libertarian Convention, which was over the weekend in Reno. People tagged me on Twitter anyway, but I wanted to get the live report from you on this show for people who are interested or people who are uninterested and all in between. Can you explain to those who don't know what is the Libertarian Party and what position it is that you personally were running for?
Okay, so the Libertarian Party is the third largest political party in the United States. It was founded in the early 70s by David Nolan, a handful of other liberty thought leaders at that time who were very upset about Nixon taking us off the gold standard, Vietnam, and a bunch of other really sucky things that the government did. And so they founded their own political party, mostly in a reaction to how bad the GOP was at the time, but there were some left-leaning anarchists involved as well. And we have been dragging ourselves along for 50 years, maybe 51 years now, in an effort to make some political change in the direction of liberty. And that has been pretty hit or miss, to put it diplomatically. So I ran for chair of the National Party over the weekend, and I was elected. I'm basically the one driving the bus now, in charge of everything.
So let's talk about the chair position. What is, when you say driving the bus, what exactly does the chair do in terms of the day-to-day activities of the party?
So some of this is going to be pretty boring, but I get to populate committees with appointments. So things like social media, communications, fundraising, auditing, finance, all of that stuff, the interesting stuff and the boring stuff. I get to appoint certain committee members. The rest of them are voted on by the National Committee, which is basically like our board. I also have the final say on hiring and firing staff. And I get to send out fundraising pledges, appeals. I'm sort of the voice of the party for all intents and purposes. I make a lot of other administrative behind the scenes decisions as well.
So how many people were up for the position and how did the voting go?
Well, there were 3 serious candidates running. There was a 4th person who was also running, but he hadn't really campaigned or traveled or done anything. And I ended up winning with 69.5% of the vote. And the other guys one of them got about 109 votes. One of them got 150-ish votes. And I got almost 700 votes. I think it was 693.
Were you surprised at the vote margin by which you got the chair position?
No, it was exactly what I thought it would be, 70%. So it was,
okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the recent history of the Libertarian Party. Do you feel, now that you've taken over as chair, any sense of, I don't know if I want to put words in your mouth, like loyalty on behalf of like recent campaigns and candidates?
Loyalty.
Let me ask you what, let me see what I'm not trying to say, because I'm thinking specifically of, there's a podcast named Patrick Bet-David, and he has a podcast called Valutainment. And he had the 2020 Libertarian candidate for president, Jo Jorgensen, on his show. And it was disastrous, in my opinion, and in the host's opinion. At one point during the show, he says to her, he's like, have you ever debated anyone? And she brought up, she was the vice presidential nominee with Harry Brown, maybe 2 decades ago. And he said, if I were you, if I were your team, I would have sat you down in a room and, fired questions at you for 2 weeks. Many of the questions he was asking her were one-on-one type stuff. She said she was an open border libertarian, which is not an uncommon position in the Libertarian Party and liberty-minded people in general. And he asked her the very obvious question, what are you going to do about, terrorists or crossing the border? It doesn't have to be terrorists, just be anyone who's a bad actor, bad faith actor. And her response was literally, well, we keep track of people like that. He asked her about, your concerns about China. And she literally said, well, look at Japan. We bombed them and now we trade with them. China's not going to do anything bad because we trade with them, which is a very not reassuring position, I think, for most people to have. Did you watch that interview?
I saw part of it. I couldn't get through the whole thing.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm asking. Like, what were your thoughts of seeing that? And is this something that you feel some side kind of camaraderie toward, or is it what you're reacting against? Like, where do you stand in relation to that campaign?
I would say that I had a sit down one-on-one conversation with Jo Jorgensen yesterday for the first time.
Oh,
Yes. And the first thing I did was let her air any and all grievances she had towards the National Party and other people, because I want to begin to repair that relationship. And, without totally throwing her under the bus, I would say she needs a lot of help.
okay.
She needs help with PR. She needs help to understand why her campaign wasn't well received. A lot of it had to do with staff. As her explanation, a lot of it had to do with staff. But, people sometimes wonder, is it because she's a woman? Is it because of this? Is it because, hello, no, I'm right here. I got elected just fine. I had plenty of support. I'm a woman. So I think a lot of our members are really well-meaning. And, she was talking about Ron Paul. She's a little bit more right-leaning into Austrian economics. None of that came through in her campaign. And none of that comes through in any of her interviews. So I think she really needs a little bit of help kind of figuring out what went wrong and how she's going to be better received. I mean, as far as loyalty goes, I feel that I owe it to her to be honest with her in a diplomatic and friendly way so that she can actually make some progress on that. But I don't feel that I have so much loyalty to her that I would lie to her face or tell her, oh, great job. It doesn't matter. Don't listen to those people. You did good. That's not really being loyal anyway, is it? Like just lying to someone.
Well, I think things are different. Loyalty in politics is a very dubious word,
Yeah.
because it also means being partisan and kind of sweeping things under the rug. And, Reagan famously had his 11th commandment, which is thou shalt not speak ill of your fellow Republicans, which is really hard to stick to when some people who are within your party, whatever party you're going to be, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green, I don't care, are going to be, just bad people,
Right.
inevitably.
Right. And I don't think she's a bad person, but I think she had really bad advice, really bad management. And the 12 shots thing that she said about Dave, I wasn't able to get into that yesterday in our meeting because there was so much to cover, but I'm going to work on that. And I think that someone put her up to saying that. And it's like, you should just go straight to the source. Just check with people. Don't smear them. We could do better than this. Come on.
Yeah, because Dave Smith, who you're referring to, he's a frequent guest on the show.
Yeah.
Patrick, as a result of that, in my opinion, debacle, he tweeted out who should come on the show to defend the Libertarian Party. And as a result, he had a roundtable of Dave Smith, popular podcaster and very failed comedian, Larry Elder, who has been the Libertarian candidate for governor of New York, I think once and now again, and Spike Cohen, who is the vice presidential candidate in 2020, who's Jo Jorgensen's running mate. And between the three of them, they did a far better job than she had in articulating the views and the path to victory for the LP.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Like there's really no contest. And those guys are pretty much the best messengers we have, whether you're coming from an anarcho-capitalist, right-leaning, Austrian economics, more, like kind of friendly to the left perspective. Those are the people we should be putting out right now.
Now, there's been a lot of huffing and puffing by members of the Libertarian Party who I would say are probably identify as culturally progressive, if not progressive in other contexts. There's been a lot of shaking fists at the sky at the Mises Caucus takeover. That was a hashtag. Was there a Mises Caucus takeover? What is the Mises Caucus? And do you regard yourself as a member of the Mises Caucus?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Okay.
So there was a lot of screaming at the sun. We had, I believe, 40 people rage quit their memberships over the weekend. The Mises Caucus swept every election. We have 2 regional representative alternates who are not in the caucus or who were not endorsed. Other than that, every single person that we advocated for to be elected won their position. All of the officers, all of the at-large representatives, regional representatives around the country, and judicial committee members. I've been really public. Up until I was elected, I was a board member for the National Mises Caucus, and I chaired the California Mises Caucus Political Action Committee as well. So I'm as invested and deep into it as anybody can be. And I had to resign those board positions just because I was elected to the National Committee and I don't want any legal issues. but I'm still a caucus member. I'm not going to lie to anyone. Like that's absolutely my area.
What can you explain to people who might not be familiar what the Mises Caucus is, where they get their name?
Yeah. So we are named after Ludwig von Mises, one of our favorite Austrian economists. And we have some very interesting focuses that the National Libertarian Party and a lot of the state parties don't necessarily go towards. So we're very interested in local elections, local grassroots movements, reforming the party, which we just did, and single issue coalitions. So working with all different kinds of groups. So working to decriminalize psilocybin, working to get school choice up in different areas, working to push the Defend the Guard initiative. And those are things that we work with.
What's the Defend the Guard initiative?
Defend the Guard initiative is to make it so that the governor has some say on whether or not we're sending out troops in undeclared wars.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big passion project to Scott Horton's and a lot of our members who are veterans. They're really advocating for that. And so it was great. We got to pass a resolution on it at the first LNC meeting, which was nice because it was, right before Memorial Day.
So one of the criticisms that the anti-Mises Caucus people have had is that this is crypto-fascism, crypto-Nazism. I can see you sitting here that you're an Aryan, certainly on site. Do you have any kind of fascist or Nazi sympathies or leanings?
I don't. Apparently, I'm friends with Hotep Jesus and Maj Touré, who sometimes get accused of hanging around with white supremacists. And, I'm friends with all of these Jewish people who also get accused of being white supremacists. So I feel like I'm not quite sure what it means to be a Nazi anymore. But I'd like to think I'm not a Nazi. I've never attended a Klan rally. I don't own any pointy white hats. They haven't given them to me yet. If I haven't been inducted in any initiations, it's kind of hard to make sense of it all, where the accusations come from.
I mean, this has been going on for quite some time. That I think the criticism of Dave Smith, who kind of is in some ways, certainly if not a leader of the Mises Caucus, that he has people on his podcast who should not be platformed, and thereby he's granting them legitimacy.
Well, I mean, a lot of these people, right, who make these arguments, they've rage quit the party several months ago and decided to vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So I'm kind of at a loss as to how it's okay to vote in a pig and a cop for vice president who has locked up tons of minorities, but it's not okay to have a spirited debate with someone who you disagree with on race and ethnicity. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, but I guess that's just how the narrative works.
Yeah, that's interesting because you would think that they could at least vote for the Green Party candidate. Right. Because the Green Party is at least consistently anti-war. Joe Biden not only was the architect of the crime bill, despite his son being an admitted crack addict, was also a big fan of the Iraq war, which he admitted was a mistake. So I can certainly understand their antipathy towards Trump. I don't understand how, I guess the choice, if their argument is, look, you're going to have to vote for one of the two major candidates, why were they libertarians to begin with?
Right. It's all about say the words. I mean, to me, what this comes across is these people are in the Libertarian Party, these far left, very progressive ones, because they don't want to vote for their parents' party. It's like they're mad at their dad. So they're going to rebel and be in the Libertarian Party because somehow this makes them unique and special. But they don't agree with us ideologically on anything except maybe free market economics. And even then, they're not totally in on it.
Guys, Your Welcome is supported by Masterworks. When I first heard about Masterworks, which is an art investment platform, I was a little skeptical. I didn't realize that art like a Picasso or Banksy was investable. But when I realized that Banksy could sell for $1 million, I knew they were onto something. So if you want to get into this time-tested 277-year-old market, listen closely. Masterworks is a $1 billion fintech that finds artwork that could soar by millions of dollars, and they give you VIP access to the $1.7 trillion art and collectible market. They buy and offer artwork to guys like you and me. That way you can invest them just like stocks. When they sell a painting, you get a cut and they get a cut, and you could sell your shares of art with other members on the platform. It's amazing. They've sold 3 paintings so far for over $1 million and handed investors over 30% returns on every one. Legally, I have to add, past performance is not indicative of future results. I'm excited about Masterworks because they let you invest in art alongside billionaires. and I reach out to them to give you VIP access to skip their wait list. All you got to do is go to masterworks.io/you're welcome. Again, that's masterworks.io/you're welcome. And you can see their important Regulation A disclosures at masterworks.com/CD. Folks, I want to take a second to talk to you about Omaha Steaks. Omaha Steaks did a very smart thing. They send me a bunch of their steaks and we cook them up. And I can tell you they are yummy, yummy in my tummy. And here's a little gift-giving wisdom from them. Dads want steaks, and Father's Day is around the corner. There isn't a better gift than Omaha Steaks. You can visit omahasteaks.com, type Malice in the search bar, and order the Dads Want Steaks package for just $99. This limited time package includes 16 mouth-watering entrees he's guaranteed to love, like smoky, tender, bacon-wrapped filet mignons, which is what I had. They're really good. Gourmet jumbo franks, and their air-chilled boneless chicken breasts. I had those as well. For sweet finish, delicious caramel apple tartlets. I'm getting hungry just thinking about them. And as a special gift for you guys, when you type Malice in the search bar and order the Dads Want Steaks package, you get also 8 free Omaha Steaks burgers. These burgers are full of bold, beefy flavor, made from 100% Omaha steaks, and they're bigger than ever at 6 ounces. Don't wait. Send Dad more than just a gift. Send him an experience he'll love and can share with you. Go to omahasteaks.com and type Malice in the search bar, or the Dads Want Steaks package. You get 16 entrees, 4 desserts, plus 8 free Omaha Steaks burgers. It's true that dads like steaks. The word for someone who doesn't like steaks is mom. Omaha Steaks isn't just steaks. It's the best steak of your life, guaranteed. That's omahasteaks.com, keyword Malice. And let's get back to the show. So I got into a little bit of heat because there was some drama, which I'll condense as quickly as possible. Basically, the New Hampshire Libertarian Party, I think, elected a slate of Mises Caucus people. The woman who had been, I believe, the chairwoman of the New Hampshire Libertarian Party, Gilletta Jarvis, I believe was her name. She basically declared herself, I am the New Hampshire Libertarian Party. She had control of the website and the mailing list and so on and so forth, refused to hand it over. The previous chair of the Libertarian Party is Joe or John Bishop Henchman. He basically had colluded with her in some capacity.
Yep.
I discussed all this on Tim Pool's show, Timcast IRL. He obviously heard it because he blocked me immediately. He quit. He deleted a ton of emails. There was an internal Libertarian Party investigation as a result of this. If you look at his Twitter, he has no acknowledgement that he had been the head of the Libertarian Party. Is he still a member of the party at all? And what is your relationship like with him?
So I'm blocked on Twitter, even though I've never gone after him. So I don't have a relationship. I saw a screenshot of his social media recently that he and his husband have changed their voter registration to independent over the weekend. And this is their new Independence Day. So we have parted ways. Oh, okay.
Another previous, I believe, chair of the Libertarian Party is someone named Nicholas Starwalk. He's often accused, I have no information about this, of being a CIA operative or something, or otherwise. He has had a very antagonistic relationship with Dave Smith, although he actually went on Dave Smith's show and they kind of hashed it out, is my recollection. And he's been very kind of publicly aggressive, trying to pick fights with members of the Mises Caucus and current Libertarian Party members. Is he someone that you have a working relationship with as well?
No, but here's an interesting thing. We used to have a really good working relationship because we both work in the legal field. When I first came into the National Party, I was running for Congress in a special election in 2017. He was the chair. He did as much work as he could to just like kind of promote my social media and give me a little bit of a visibility boost. And I maintained a good relationship with him in spite of all of the Mises Caucus stuff and trying to oust him. I basically took the position that, hey, it's nothing personal. You're just not a good fit for this role. And we don't like the direction you're taking in the party, but I like you otherwise. That all changed as soon as lockdowns happened. And he, lost his mind, had COVID hysteria, unfriend, I hate you. You're the enemy now. So
he was endorsing the lockdowns?
Oh yeah, hardcore. It's impolite. It's impolite, Michael, to leave your house if there's a pandemic.
Wait. I don't everyone is entitled to have any point of view that they want, like broadly speaking. And I guess I have to ask you to speak for him, but because I'm not privy to these arguments, how can someone reconcile a defense of lockdowns with being a libertarian, which is ostensibly being opposed to state action in almost all, if not all cases?
I literally can't understand it. I can't wrap my head around it. And that's why he's gone. Because no one else had any respect for it either, with the exception of his little progressive gang. No one else could stand it. It was horrifying. It was absolutely mortifying to see leadership of the National Libertarian Party tell people to stay home because it's impolite to go out and get someone else sick.
I also don't understand that argument, because the only way, historically speaking, for a third party to get any traction is to be impolite. The big argument,
Correct.
whether it's the Green Party, Progressive Party, Populist Party, whatever party historically we're talking about, their argument, which I think is indisputable and which pretty much any Democrat Republican would agree with, is the Democrats and Republicans, despite publicly battling, in many cases sincerely, do kind of have this tacit handshake agreement that when push comes to shove, they're going to circle the wagons and make sure that they're the two people seated at the table, and they'll do what they can to make sure, other than the chance when like one party can be a spoiler, then they're going to let them in. But in terms of having another party have a seat at the table, this is just a complete non-starter for them. And if necessary, this has been done historically. They've co-opted the platforms of these parties because it's more important for them to maintain power than to have any kind of, any sense of principle. So this would have been a big opportunity for the Libertarian Party to be like, we're the only party speaking out against this. Even the Republicans are going along with it. And I can understand how he personally would perhaps think, but at the same time, as my buddy Lou Perez pointed out, if you don't have COVID, you can't spread COVID.
Yeah, it's amazing how that works. You don't spread the germs that you don't have. I think this is why the party has dragged so horribly, especially for the last 20 years, is because the libertarians in leadership seem to have low self-esteem. They're embarrassed to talk about being libertarian. They're embarrassed to push libertarian messaging or libertarian policies. It's very much like this, please look at me, look at me. It's like a really sad, nerdy dude begging a hot chick for attention. That's kind of the attitude. Like, oh, well,
are you categorizing this show right now?
No, I'm categorizing the National Libertarian Party.
Okay.
Unfortunately, for the last 20 years, it's if I'm just nice enough, they'll pay attention to me. If I'm just really nice, then I'm going to get the attention. One day it'll pay off. It doesn't. No, literally, no one cares about us. We have to change our strategy, our messaging.
Yeah, I would think the only, like, if you look at Ross Perot, Teddy Roosevelt, these are examples. Historically, the only time the two parties have given attention to a third party is when there's a threat to their power.
Yep.
It's not a threat in the sense of, someone's going to do harm to you or to your family, God forbid. It's a threat in the sense of, you might lose this office unless you give us what we want.
Yeah.
And when things like that happen, politicians end up being extremely receptive to what is being asked of them.
Absolutely. And we've seen that happen a little bit in Georgia. We've got this guy, Shane Hazel, running for governor, and people are freaked out because he's running as a libertarian and Georgia's turned into a swing state. But I want it to be more than just spoiling elections, right? Like, I want them to be really traumatized and afraid that we're going to take part of their voting block. That's really what I want to go towards.
Yeah, it seems that it is very clear. Do you agree with, so when Jo Jorgensen was on Patrick Bet-David's show, she made the claim that, he said, look, you basically cost Trump the election. Here was the margin in several of these states. Your vote covered that margin. And her argument was, we take equally from Democrats and Republicans. And he said, well, how do you break that down? And she just pointed out several things where she agreed with Trump on. But when it came to why a Democrat would vote for her, she said, oh, pro-choice and some other things. It's like, why would a pro-choice person vote for Joe when they could vote for Biden? It didn't seem to make much sense.
Right.
Do you think that she drew equally from both parties?
No, but I do think that she drew from the Democrats more than we would usually do so. And I think that Gary Johnson did in the last election cycle as well, because there were a lot of Democrats who were genuinely, understandably, repulsed by Hillary Clinton and repulsed by Kamala Harris. So I think we got more than usual. And I'm just speaking anecdotally because I had a lot of progressive friends message me and ask just a couple of questions and say, basically, look, I'm not a libertarian, but I'm going to vote for Jo Jorgensen because I just literally can't stomach the other choice.
So going forward, what is the strategy going into 2024? When is the Libertarian Party going to be having conventions to pick the nominee?
So state conventions to pick our nominee happen in 2024, mostly starting at the
Okay.
beginning of the year. There's going to be a couple, I think, at the very end of 2023, and we'll be moving it along state by state. And then, like that kind of is like the polling starts there, people start making the rounds. And then the convention will happen, I believe, in May of next year. Personally, I'm really frustrated that it happens so late in the game, but coming into the chair position at this hour, there's nothing I can do to push it back. I'm going to have to work to push that back closer to the Iowa caucuses, maybe in the following election cycle.
So there was also some recent drama with Carolyn Harlos, I believe is her name. I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing her name. She had been the secretary of the LP. She was very kind of, I don't want to say aggressive, but she, kind of forthright in her opinions. Other members on the committee, the leadership committee, whatever the term is, that run the party, had issues with her. And as a result of this, she was kicked off. What is her current status within the Libertarian Party?
Oh, she was reelected.
Oh,
She was reelected with a slightly higher percentage of votes than I was. I think it was 70 or 71%. So she was reinstated. They also reinstated her as secretary before the election, just as a formality, because the delegates thought what happened was wrong. So she's back in.
so what is the status of all those people who voted to kick her off as the secretary?
Well, not a single one of them was reelected.
Wow.
We didn't punish them in any way, but they're out. I think a couple of them have actually quit the party. I'm still waiting to get evidence, but the rumors are flying.
So one of the things that has been claimed in months recently, that as the Mises Caucus has started taking over the party, this has cost fundraising. This has caused party membership numbers to go down. This is turning the party into basically a dumpster fire. How accurate is that claim?
Well, I would say that fundraising had gone down. And some of that is because donors pulled out because the Mises Caucus takeover was evident. And some of it is because that always happens in a midterm year. That's just the way that it is. And some of it's because the party made some pretty poor financial decisions. But the good news is we got about 61 new lifetime members over the weekend. And still counting. And that raised us like $93,000 just there. We got 119 new memberships the last I counted. And it's like I'm just checking in with our staff like every few hours to see what the new number is. So we're already turning it around. We're about to start a big fundraising appeal to pay off the debt that was incurred in the last few months, which some people think it was to spite me personally. Some people say, oh no, it was just bad financial management. Either way, we're going to sort it out and get rid of it.
Folks, I love my plants. In fact, I just ordered an African Commiphora that arrived here on Saturday, and it was stolen from my doorstep. Maybe I should have ordered instead from Fast Growing Trees. Spring and summer, the seasons for finally getting outdoors for entertaining, pool parties, barbecues. If your yard looks like a plant cemetery, you're not going to enjoy it as much. You can get your place looking like a resort easily, very easily, with Fast Growing Trees. When it comes to caring for your plants, know-how matters. FastGrowingTrees.com's experts curate thousands of plant varieties for your specific climate location needs. You don't got to wait in line. You don't got a car to haul the plants all over town. You order online over the phone, and your plants are shipped to your door in 1 to 2 days. And their growing and advice care is available 24/7. Whether you're looking for privacy, shade, natural beauty for your yard, Fast Growing Trees have the perfect plants and expertise to help you find them. Even if you've never had a green thumb, they'll make you feel like you do. 1 million home gardeners have already seen what FastGrowingTrees.com can do for them. I highly recommend going to FastGrowingTrees.com so that you get some cool plants for affordable prices. And with a 30-day live and thrive guarantee, you can trust everything will be healthy for years to come. Go to FastGrowingTrees.com/welcome right now. 15% off your order. Get 15% off at FastGrowingTrees.com/welcome. Let's get back to the show. Do you think there's any truth to the claim that the Libertarian Convention was held in Reno to make it as inhospitable a venue for as many people as possible in order to have the people who had been running the party maintain their hold on power?
That's possible. I mean, that's what the Pennsylvania Libertarian Party did. They held their convention in Williamsport.
I've never heard. I went to college in Pennsylvania in a small town in central Lewisburg. and I've never heard of Williamsport.
Yeah, no one had. And it was like 3 hours away from the closest airport. Ridiculous. So, also what happens is people put together these convention bids, and it takes a tremendous amount of work, and you're trying to make it affordable so that the most people show up as possible. And, like we batted around different places in the country. The next one is set to be in DC, which I personally find horrifying. But I have to see how much wiggle room I have in the contract. I haven't dug into it yet, but it is what it is. It's like, what do you attribute it to, right? Malfeasance, incompetence, bad circumstances. It could be a little bit of everything.
Is this the first thing that you can unquestionably claim is not the fault of the state?
Yes.
So there's something people refer to as Beltway Libertarianism, which is this kind of ideology which is held by DC and DC suburb residents. I'm thinking specifically of the Cato Institute, where I was an intern a quarter of a century ago now, and Reason Magazine, which is from the Reason Foundation, which does some great work and some not so great work. Do you have any contacts or relationships with those two organizations?
I have a really good relationship with a lot of people at Reason. David Knott is a friend of mine, Nick Gillespie, Melissa Mann. I think there's some really great people at Reason. John, whose last name I always butcher, Osterhout. And apparently there are also a couple of people at Reason who hate my guts, who just wrote a nasty article about the Mises Caucus takeover. And, Elizabeth Nolan Brown emceed our convention gala. And I see her complaining about misogyny and all of the men in leadership now in the Mises Caucus. Hello. I thought I would be more visible to a feminist, but it is what it is.
I mean, what was the previous, was the previous board, is board the term for the people running the party?
Sure, it works.
Was the board previously have more of a sense of gender equity?
I think it's about the same. You got two officers who are women. You've got a regional representative who's a woman. You've got a regional
I have to interrupt
alternate.
you because it's really funny, because if the complaint is there's not enough gender equity, and they're kicking off Carolyn Harlos and they're trying to keep you out of office, I mean, these are the two most, other than Jo Jorgensen, the candidate, these were the two, from my understanding, most prominent women within the party.
Yes. And my stiff competition was an older white man. So typical progressive agenda, right? Let's talk about women, and then at the last minute, oh, we just can't do it now. Let's bait and switch and throw in an old white guy.
So what is the argument that the Libertarian Party is misogynist, and where's that coming from, and what is your response to that?
I guess it's that there's not enough women in the party, probably because we don't pay enough attention to issues that real women actually care about in the liberty movement. Yeah, that's my response. They think that, well, okay, women technically, usually, according to the data, the studies, they usually lean a little more Democrat, a little more progressive. Maybe it's because their brains are wired a certain way. Maybe it's not. Maybe that makes me a horrible misogynist. But I think the Libertarian Party has done an awful job of doing outreach to women on women's issues, except for abortion, for the past 50 years. Like, women care about medical freedom. Well, we dropped the ball on that. They care about what you're putting into your children's bodies. Not a single statement on that. They care about food freedom. Maybe it's not a big deal.
Can you rewind this? I'm sorry, because this we should break this down. You were saying that putting things in children's body. What were you referring to, and what is the Libertarian Party's position?
So I'm referring specifically to vaccinations.
Okay.
And the Libertarian Party doesn't have a stance. They did take kind of a weak anti-mandate stance, so I appreciate that. But we don't ever do any talking about parental rights, or letting a parent decide what goes into their children's bodies. Or how about this one for kids who have, like seizure disorders? They can take cannabis and Rick Simpson oil. There's all these sort of interesting little niche areas that we could talk about, and they overlap with other really interesting areas where we would gain a lot of ground, but we just don't ever go there.
this is just kind of surprising to hear, because it seems like being a third party, Noam Chomsky had that quote, which I'm going to get not quite right, about the best way to control a population is to have very strictly limited debate, but very intense debate within those parameters. Meaning, like, you could argue between like 5 and 6, and you could have 5.5, 5.25, or 5.75, but 7 or 4 is completely beyond the pale. And it would seem like this would be such an opportunity for a third party to not take a stance on an issue that both of the main parties would rather just sweep under the rug and have this sort of tacit behind the scenes agreement while they're arguing over, transgender bathrooms or some other complete distraction. And the LP has not been taking advantage of this market opportunity.
No, too controversial. One of the former members, when it came to lockdowns, actually, she said, we must stay in our lane. Like, that's not our lane. So it's, we're about to.
What would that lane be? Like, being like
I don't
the
know.
parties?
I feel like they only think we should exist to spoil other people's elections. Like, they don't envision us actually advocating for individual liberty. Because anytime that a serious issue comes up, we drop the ball. It's mortifying. Like, the messaging that's come out about war is awful. No messaging on lockdowns for an entire year. The mandate messaging, the anti-mandate messaging took a nasty side swipe at us that basically everybody's already read they're educated. And if they're going to make a choice to get vaccinated, they've already done it, and they know that they should have. It's just awful. It was like, well, let them have their rights anyway, even though they made a bad choice, is essentially what was put out. What?
I would also think the Libertarian Party would be in a position to attract people who are historically on the left, who have a very, very well-grounded reason to be suspicious of when huge corporations and governments collude and screwing everyone else in the process. And there is, I just tweeted this out like last year, just getting people to acknowledge that there is an enormous incentive by Pfizer, who does not have to be a nefarious entity at all, who could absolutely be providing a public service that would be benefit for everyone, that does not deny that there is a huge incentive for Pfizer and other such agencies to work with governments to force everyone to consume their product. I mean, that statement's almost tautological.
And it should be basic libertarianism to talk about cronyism. It should be very basic. But instead, all we got was, oh my goodness, this private company came in and saved us. That's it.
But I don't understand how this would attract someone. If someone has that belief, which they are entitled to, why wouldn't they vote for a party that would be positioned to implement that belief, specifically in this case, the Democratic Party?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Why were these people attracted to the Libertarian Party? What were they trying to achieve? They don't understand their market. They don't understand demographics. There's no vision, no direction. It seems to just be, we're the other Democrats. We're the lesser known Democrats.
Okay, so you had another list of things you were talking about that the LP was in a position to message on, but drop the ball on. Can you?
Oh, yeah. So school choice, that's something that women care about. That's something families care about. Food freedom. And this is something for people who live in the big city, this will just kind of go right over your head. But for the rest of the country, it's kind of a big deal. People want to drink raw milk. They have a small farm. They want to be able to slaughter on their farm and sell directly to consumers.
Wait, that's not allowed?
Sort of things not most of the time it is not. And there are certain states that'll, yeah.
I'm a farmer. I pass, I'm sure, inspections, whatever. My farm's clean. I kill a cow. I'm a professional. My family's been doing this for generations. There's a huge movement, especially with white people, about farm to table and restaurants too, like buy food that's close to you, eat locally, locavores. That is illegal in some places.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You have to send your cattle off to a processing plant, even if it's a small farm. You can't even if you were going to hire someone, right? Okay, whatever. I'm just the stupid farmer who's been doing this for 100 years, but I'll hire someone. Could you hire someone who's certified to come do it at your farm? In a lot of cases, no. You got to ship it off. It's a huge, it's a waste of money, nightmare. It's not any safer. It's just a disaster. It's just government garbage.
But that seems like such, like you were saying, this seems like such a nonpartisan, low-hanging, I hate using this term, common sense issue.
Yeah.
Where it's like, what is the downside here? And the upside is huge. You want first of all, the farmer is going to create a bond with the community. Strong communities are great in terms of reducing crime, having people thrive, so on and so forth. It's going to be healthier in that you know exactly where your food came from. It also encourages the small businessman, who's the backbone of the kind of capitalism I think virtually everyone likes, which is, you know, you have that kind of sense of independence, pride in the artisan having pride in his product and his work. This just seems, this is complete corporatism at its worst.
Yeah, it's one of the things I've noticed about the Libertarian Party over the past 5-6 years is that they really want to speak to coastal elites and people living in big cities, and that no one else matters. Their issues don't matter, that things they care about don't matter. It's just, can we get everybody who was at a Black Lives Matter protest and every coastal elite tech programmer, can we get them to vote for us? And everybody else can just screw off.
But they can't, because that demographic is the one that is has the most antipathy toward the message of the Libertarian Party.
Absolutely. It just doesn't make any sense.
Okay. How many do you know off the top of your head? Sorry to put you on the spot. How many elected libertarians there are across America?
Oh, I have not looked. I'm going to guess and think it's between 600 and 800. I'd have to double check.
Has there been a backlash among the elected officials toward your taking over of the party and the Mises Caucus takeover?
Yes. Not with all of them, but with some of them. Because some of them are Mises Caucus people that we got elected. Everyone likes to pretend that doesn't happen, but it does.
What form has the backlash taken?
Oh, I'm canceling my membership. Oh, I'm so disappointed. Just things like that.
The thing that's interesting to me is they seem to be jumping the gun a little bit.
Yeah.
It seems that like the lot of the Mises Caucus people, from what I've seen, have been more than happy to give Gary Johnson, twice the candidate, and this obviously before the Mises Caucus, and Jo Jorgensen a chance. That they weren't particularly, as soon as she became the nominee, oh, we have a woman, you know, screw this, you know, this is terrible. They seem to have been rooting for her to some extent. There isn't even a Mises Caucus libertarian nominee for president, and they're already kind of flipping out, even though everyone who got elected did so following the party bylines. They paid their dues, they showed up, they put in the work, correct?
Absolutely. And we put in a massive amount of work. I'm sure you're probably not shocked to hear it, but there's not a lot of behind the scenes stuff that happens in the Libertarian Party, like maybe at the national level, but at the state level, it's pretty easy to get involved, and they desperately need people. So the Mises Caucus in the state of Washington, for example, worked really hard on the Jo Jorgensen campaign. And they're and little different groups of Mises Caucus people all over the country worked really hard. And, you know, to be fair, she was everyone's second choice. You know, we were backing Jacob Hornberger. We wanted to see a different direction, but we were also really relieved when Jo got elected that, okay, you know what, for the first time in quite a while, we don't have a washed up Republican running. We have someone who's been in the party a long time, who is actually a libertarian. She's not just glomming on because her career is dead and it's like her last death scream. So we were happy to do that. I did a big Soho Forum debate on her behalf and won, you know. So what happened is that I think people want to kind of rewrite history. We supported her, we continued to support her. We didn't like her campaign and we complained about it. So the way they've spun that is, you hate Jo Jorgensen, you never supported her. And I'm like, oh, shut up. Like, that's just so far from the truth. We put in the work that we were supposed to put in.
Hey guys, Your Welcome is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Now, most of you listening right now are probably multitasking. Yep, while you're listening to me talk, you're probably also driving, cleaning, exercising, maybe in grocery shopping. But if you're not in some kind of moving vehicle, there's something else you could be doing right now, getting an auto quote from Progressive Insurance. It's easy. You could save money by doing it right from your phone. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save over $700 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Discounts for having multiple vehicles in your policy, being a homeowner, and more. So just like your favorite podcast, Progressive will be with you 24/7, 365 days a year, so you're protected no matter what. Multitask right now. Quote your car insurance at progressive.com to join the over 27 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, national annual average insurance savings by new customers surveyed who saved Progressive between June 2020 and May 2021. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations. Hey guys, you ever feel like you're being followed around the internet and maybe advertisers know a bit too much about you? Well, our sponsor, Ipvanish VPN, is here to help you take back your privacy and help you become anonymous on the internet. What is it? Ipvanish is a virtual private network, a VPN for short. It's a tool that helps you safely browse the internet. You can use a VPN on your computer, tablet, phone, things like your Fire Stick when you stream media. When you use a VPN, all your data is encrypted. What you're reading, what you're searching, what you're watching, whatever you're doing. And that's important because what you're doing is no one's business but yours. For listeners of the show, Ipvanish is offering 65% off their annual plan. It's only $375 a month. Ipvanish is super easy to use. You turn it on with one click. It runs in the background, helping to protect you while you're browsing the web. You run into a problem, no problem. Ipvanish has 24/7 support by email, chat, and phone. Go to ipvanish.com/malice and use promo code malice. That's MALICE to claim your 65% off savings. Their annual plan is just $44.99 for the first year with our exclusive discount. This is the time to sign up. With our discount, their current promotion, you get a VPN for 65% off the usual offering. And Ipvanish is the best of best. They've got a 4.7 out of 5 on Trustpilot with over 6,000 reviews. Remember, it's ipvanish.com/malice to get the deal and start protecting yourself online. Let's get back to the show. I'm going to pull up the exact tweet because I don't want to misquote what she said, because this was basically kind of a touchstone moment in the 2020 campaign. She said, and this is a tweet of hers from, I thought I remembered I'd racial her and I hadn't. This is from July 2020. She had said, it is not enough to be passively not racist, double negative. We must be actively anti-racist. And then I replied to her and said, as the Libertarian Party candidate for president, do you support the repeal of anti-discrimination laws, which is a very 101 libertarian question. I was disappointed. I hate using that word, disappointed. I was on Joe Walsh's podcast. Joe Walsh is a prominent, never Trump, former Republican. I don't know if he considers himself a Republican any longer. I asked him this, and he said yes. He had no problem saying, let the market handle it. She ignored my question, which I thought was just surprising because this is kind of 101 type stuff. Is it your view and the view of the Libertarian Party that discrimination laws should be repealed?
Yes, it is. And I'm sure that if you asked her about that, she would probably say that that was a staffer or a volunteer running her social media account. And I will go out on a limb and not officially speak for her, but I'm going to guess that she would say she agrees and wants anti-discrimination laws repealed. This is, again, be careful on who you hire for your campaigns.
Okay, so this is, I'm going to get a little critical, and which I'm sure
that's okay. As
that, if you are, I remember in 2016, there was some Freedom Fest event or something like that in New York, and they had flyers for Gary Johnson's campaign, little postcards, and there were 2 typos on it, like misplaced commas and things like that. And yes, this is being a stickler, but at the same time, if you are running for president, if there's like misplaced commas on your resume, you're getting out of college, you're applying for a job, that resume is going in the garbage, right? So if you're running for president, in my view, and I don't think this is a particularly controversial view, you don't have room for little things like that. Especially as a third party candidate, it is your job to present yourself as someone who is reputable and is on the same level as the big guys, as opposed to this kind of, campaign carnival. We're doing this as a joke. So this kind of like, well, it was her staff. It's not like she's traveling with an entourage of 100 people.
Right.
Like it doesn't, I mean, I can't for the life of me imagine Donald Trump or Joe Biden just shrugging his shoulders and say it was his staff. At the very least, what would happen is that staff member would be forced to come forward, issue mea culpa, and either be demoted or fired. Or at the very least, they would say, Janet Reno, when she killed children in Waco, went in front of the cameras and said, this is my responsibility. So I don't know what's worse, the fact that it was a staffer, let's pretend it was, but for the candidate to be like, well, it was a staffer and shrug. Well, what steps have you put in place to make sure this staffer doesn't veer your campaign in the wrong direction in the future?
Yeah, totally reasonable critique. I mean, I agree with you. it's like, I can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It was done, but I hope that this is a lesson going forward, that you got to take this seriously. You can't have someone who's incompetent or someone who fundamentally disagrees with your views running your campaign. It's a disaster. I would have fired the person and made a statement about it.
I'm not asking you to name names because I'm sure they're probably some kid, but is there awareness within the LP who did this, and are they still going to be involved in the next presidential candidate's campaign?
I don't know who did it. I have guesses. I don't know, but I can guarantee you that they're not going to be involved in any presidential campaign that's propped up by the Mises caucus.
Okay.
That's 100% not happening. Not at all.
So did she express any sense of contrition or the like for having her campaign be mismanaged by her staff?
Yes. Yes, she did.
Okay.
Yes. And yeah, I don't want to reveal too much, but we did have quite a conversation about that and what would happen if she ran again and so on and so forth. I'm confident that things would be different. I'm not confident that she would be the best candidate, but I do think she would run a drastically different campaign.
Is there any chance from her following the lead of some of the other people and leaving the party?
No. I had a really good sit down conversation with her yesterday. She's in and she wants to help me at the national level. So, that's why I'm trying to be gracious to her and give her constructive criticism, not bash her really hard, but say, these are the things this is what went wrong. If you want to get more support, you got to change X, Y, and Z. We can't do this again.
I think, are we at a point now that the Democratic Party is the only party not being run by a woman? Because the Republican Party is run by or co-chaired by Ronna McDaniel. So that leaves the Democrats as the only one.
Yep. Women are taking over politics. We have nothing better to do.
But it's just kind of, if you're speaking to that feminist criticism, it just seems kind of like, if you look at, for example, the Democratic field of candidates in 2020, Hillary Clinton, for all her faults, did break the glass ceiling. She was the first nominee from a major party. She did get more votes than Donald Trump. As a result of that, in 2020, the Democratic Party had like 4 or 5, no, I think it was 5: Gillibrand, Klobuchar, Tulsi Gabbard, Elizabeth Warren. I'm sure I'm missing one. Kamala Harris, that's 5 right there. And it was kind of an afterthought, like the idea that a woman could be the nominee of either party is now basically a given, and it's not, it's just a shrug. It's like, okay, yeah. So it seems to me that this is kind of, unless you're speaking to, oh, I know what it is. This is what I think it is. There is a big movement among left libertarians that the Libertarian Party and libertarians in general should speak more about sex workers and pornography and do more to normalize sex workers and advocate for them. Is that something you agree with them on? And is this a priority for you?
It's not a priority. Sure, I think sex work should be decriminalized. I don't have to lead with that in my messaging. I'm not going to. Like, okay, I agree. It should be decriminalized. There you go. If someone passes a law decriminalizing it, repealing the criminalization, however you want to call it, great. Well done. We'll probably do an article about that. We'll probably also do an article about some socially conservative issue to balance it out a little bit more, like food freedom or school choice.
So can you explain that argument in favor of legalizing sex work, prostitution? Because wouldn't that just completely destroy the kind of moral fabric of any community?
Well, I think that exalting sex work would not be good for the community. I think that quietly decriminalizing it so that people don't go to jail would be better. I think it's really like a cost benefit analysis thing from a policy perspective, that then people who are poor, can go out and make their living if they're desperate and not end up in jail and end up incarcerated and part of the system. But it's not something that I'm going to champion and celebrate. I think it's just something unfortunate, just like legalizing crack or heroin. I don't think it should be illegal, but for crying out loud, I'm not going to go and give it a shining recommendation and tell people to shoot up.
Well, I think that the argument to be made, and feel free to steal this, is crack and heroin are already legal if you're wealthy.
There you go. I guess sex work is too, if you're already wealthy and powerful.
That's true. Like you're not really going to jail. Maybe you're going to have reputational problem if you hire a hooker. Although I can't for the life of me remember the last time any celebrity got in trouble for this, and Heidi
Right.
Fleiss with her black book. Listen, I mean, if we're going to get really dark about it, you can go to Epstein's Island as a powerful person and have sex with underage people, and you're not even have your name be made public. So that is how effectively the powerful are protected, inoculated against any consequences for their behavior. I'm assuming the Libertarian Party is against legalization of sex work for minors.
I hope so. I'm not going to be pushing that in any respect, and I don't think that anybody else on my board is. I'm sure there are probably some weirdos in the party who would push for it, but you're not going to hear that coming out of the national level. No, not once, not ever. If we're not going to get dragged or baited into that debate.
So let's talk about foreign policy. I think this is an issue that the Libertarian Party has kind of been a little bit over the map. Is there a Libertarian Party position under your leadership vis-a-vis what's going on in Ukraine?
There's going to be. So the messaging has been really weak. We are going to be talking about NATO and entangling alliances and how nuclear war with Russia is something we should avoid at all costs. I think we can do that without quote unquote, shilling for Russia. And if we got to educate people on that, the difference between being anti-war and pro-Russia, then that's our job and we're going to do it.
It seems to me that running a third party is a largely thankless job.
Yeah.
Have you officially taken over already, or you just won the election?
I am in the process of taking over, getting the emails, internal comms, all of that set up, talking with staff. So it's ongoing. I'm trying to have everything fixed and squared away by the end of this week.
It seems to be a largely thankless role with a lot of work and a little benefit. Is this something you've been working for so long?
I think that it's really important to have a principled liberty voice in the political scene. Even if you don't win elections, even if you don't make political progress in that way, I think people need to hear that you don't have to just be a blood-sucking government statist for the rest of your life, that there's a different way, and that the policy choices that Biden or Trump or whoever makes are incredibly damaging. We don't have anybody talking about inflation. Almost all of the Republicans voted with Donald Trump to spend tons of money back in 2020, just print money out of thin air. We're all feeling it right now. No one talks about it because Republicans are just ashamed. I mean, they'll say Biden did it, but come on, that's not a real answer. We got to have someone out there doing it. So I'm doing it. I realize that it's kind of thankless, but I've had an incredible amount of support through the caucus and through a lot of people who used to be card-carrying members of the Libertarian Party and left when it took such a bad turn with progressivism and woke talking points. So it's not entirely thankless.
What is your relationship like with William Weld? Have you ever met him? He was the best presidential nominee in 2016.
I have briefly met him. I would say we don't have a relationship.
What about get with Gary Johnson, who was the nominee twice, and he was former New Mexico governor?
No relationship. I'm sure I'll keep it cordial and friendly, though.
Have you heard anything from them regarding the Mises Caucus takeover of the party?
Nope, not a peep, not a word.
Oh, interesting. So there was no words of congratulations from any of them or anything like that?
No. And that, Bill Weld he bailed on us to rejoin the GOP, and obviously that didn't work out for him. So whatever.
But he promised that he'd be a Libertarian Party member for life when he was the vice presidential nominee.
It's very tragic how he broke that promise. Very tragic.
Hey guys, we got a different kind of sponsor for this episode. It's the Jordan Harbinger Show. It's a podcast you really should be listening to. I know every day someone tells you just have to listen to some podcast. You nod and say, sure. And then you never listen to it. Don't let that happen here. Jordan's Show, which Apple named one of its best of 2018, is aimed at making you better informed, more critical thinker, so you get a sense of how the world actually works and come to your own conclusions about what's happening, even inside your brain. Each episode's a combination of a different guest and Jordan's great interviewing skills. There's something for everyone there. One episode, he's talking to a hostage negotiator. Another episode, he's talking about a cinematographer who discovered a lost city in the jungle. Lots of interesting stuff there. If that's not worth checking out, I'm not sure what is. So go to jordanharbinger.com/subscribe, HARBINGER. Get on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. And here's info on Jordan as a host, jordanharbinger.com/about.
There's there's been scandal on planet Earth ever since Adam and Eve went apple picking. I'm Tom Zenner, creator and co-host of the 1 Degree of Scandalous podcast. My co-host is the world's foremost authority on what can happen when you're caught up in the epicenter of a salacious scandal, since he was involved in the biggest scandal of all time.
Well, okay, yes, Tom, I am Cato Kalin, America's favorite house guest, and guess what? I can finally afford to live my own couch. You know, my life is so much less complicated, I've noticed. You know, Tom and I can't wait to take you inside every major scandal that's happened in the past 50 years or so, and get the juicy details from the people who, just like me, had their world turned upside down.
Americans are obsessed with scandal, and thankfully, celebrities, politicians, athletes, and pop culture icons are equally obsessed with creating them for us.
The world is crazy, people. It's crazy, but remember, it could be worse. It could be you in the middle of a messy scandal. So celebrate the fact that you get to hear about the most famous scandals in history and the ones happening in the news right now, right this very second. Now!
Join Cato Kalin and me, Tom Zenner, for 1 Degree of Scandalous, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube.
Let's get back to the show. Yeah. What are you most looking forward to in terms of changing the party and hopefully changing its impact on the political scene in America?
Man, there's a couple. It's hard to choose. So I'm really, really looking forward to changing our social media immediately. Going to be dealing with that this week. I'm really looking forward to.
Wait, let me put you on the spot then. Let's look at some party tweets like
Yes.
just from today.
Yes.
And let's have Angela McArdle reacts to it's LP National is the handle, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's look up some of their tweets. 228,000 followers. They're retweeting things. This is okay. This one I think you'd like. Rights do not emanate from government, but belong inherently to each of us. We are not government property. Approved?
Approved.
Yeah. There's a Ron Paul quote. A good guy with a gun and police with a gun are not the same thing. Hashtag end qualified immunity. Approved?
Approved.
Okay, that's a good one. Pardon Snowden now.
Sure. Approved.
We mourn the innocent lives lost in another senseless act of violence. May we all work together toward a more peaceful world.
C-.
Oh, why? Okay, what's wrong with that?
It seems a little pandering.
Okay, that's fair. The presidency has become too powerful, Congress has become too weak, and presidents love war. Hashtag no war with China.
So, C-. I don't understand what the point is.
Okay, that's fair. Taiwan is a country.
F.
Why is that an F?
Because that's just repeating a Biden administration talking point.
Okay, so
it implies that we should go to war with China. That's unclear. That's not good messaging.
Okay, I'm going to skip this Martin Luther King quote. There, price gouging is good, actually. What?
Okay,
So,
I'll approve that one. I'll approve that one. I'm shocked that it came out. But
can you explain that why it's good?
Well, it's good because then someone can't run into the store, buy everything up and go home and hoard it or price gouge it there. Like, it allows people to get things that they really need if they're truly desperate. Probably could have explained it a little bit better. So we'll give that one a B.
If you support the removal of governmental impediments to free trade and immigration, hashtag you might be a libertarian.
B. Give it a B. I like it, but it's not very clear.
So there's a whole slew of hashtag you might be a libertarian. They're trying to make that happen, and it didn't really
not
go
happening.
anywhere.
Yeah, it's not happening.
I'm trying to look. So it seems like there's none of these that are particular. The answer to evil acts of violence, bigotry, racism, and hate is never to take away innocent people's right to defend themselves.
Oh, I guess that's okay. I'm really triggered by the word bigotry.
Because you hate it so much?
Because I'm a bigot, apparently, allegedly. So, because I'm mean or something?
Trans rights are human rights?
F.
Why is that an F?
What are trans rights?
Yeah, okay.
I would like to know.
Let me see. So other than that, so this doesn't seem like, historically speaking, by historically I mean the last couple of years, the LP National Twitter account, which is a huge opportunity for a third party to compete on an even playing field with not only major publications like the New York Times or Washington Post or even Reason, but also the Republicans and Democrats. This seems to me to be a very missed opportunity.
Yeah, totally. And they have worked, I can tell, I've been watching over the past month, they have worked to clean it up a little bit, make it more in alignment with who I'm sure they anticipated was going to be future leadership. I appreciate that, but we just don't know what we're doing. It's like you have a tool and you just don't know how to utilize it.
Right. Yeah, nothing here seems to be particularly, but that's the other thing. Nothing here seems to be particularly objectionable, but nothing also seems to be particularly exciting.
Right. It's just this is what it means to be a libertarian. But there's nothing like particularly catching. There's no zingers. There's no gotcha. There's nothing that really inspires me or makes me stop and be like, oh, like I hadn't thought about that. Oh, wow. What an interesting way to look at things.
It really seems to me that, the Libertarian Party has been proud of coming in third in a two-man race, and that their position is, they punch in the clock, they give the libertarian argument, 5 o'clock comes, they punch out the clock, the Republicans and Democrats take whatever they said, leave it on the floor by the door, and continue going on with their conversation completely unbothered. And in their head, just showing up and saying their piece and going home is doing their part, even though the possibility of that having any kind of efficacy is literally zero.
I can't even understand why anybody has been motivated to do it either, because it makes almost no impact. That's the thing that I don't understand is, and people who have been in the party a long time get very upset when we talk about it this way. I know you have all worked really hard to maintain ballot access and you have done a lot behind the scenes, but setting that aside, the impact on public policy is negligible. So I don't get why everybody is just like, yeah, I want to spend 60 hours a week doing nothing. It's very confusing.
But I remember when there was this Ayn Rand organization, not organization, like a social group in New York where people just meet once a month to talk about Rand and her philosophy and her novels and whatever was idea. And I went to one, and there were people there who were falling asleep, and someone had commented that this is basically their version of church.
Yes.
Like they show up, they do their time, and now they can sleep happy knowing that they've done their part, even though the state keeps growing and people keep getting oppressed, and in some cases actually losing their lives. Like, let's not forget that when we're talking about the state, it's not just, oh, you're going to have to pay slightly higher taxes, or, oh, you can't buy raw milk. I mean, if that was the extent of the state, I don't think anyone would have a problem. We could pack it up and go home. But we're talking about mom in the hospital, and you're not being allowed to say goodbye to her, not being able to have funerals, even if you want to show up in hazmat suits. Like, hey, okay, fine, I'll buy the hazmat suit. Let me go to the funeral for my mom,
Yep.
my dad. Too bad you can't do it. I can't go to the gym, even though that's the most correlated with people being healthy and concerned with their health. It's a health club on earth, but instead people are going to be fined millions of dollars. It just seems that there's no vision in terms of actually realizing any of these things. It seems to be very much this high school debate club idea where you have 3 people, 4 if you count the Green Party. I get up, I say my piece, you get up, you say your piece, everyone votes, and then you go home, which might make sense in that classroom where everyone's on equal footing. But in terms of the structural disadvantages and historical disadvantages that any third party is going to face, it seems to be completely out of touch with any semblance of reality.
Yes, it's completely out of touch with reality. And it's one of the reasons, like, it's really hard to unpack all of the psychological implications and background and everything that got us to this point. But it is kind of like church. They show up, they want to be acknowledged for doing something good to make the world a better place. We don't ever measure how much good we did. There's no quantifiable metrics, data, goals on any of that. We get really excited if we get someone elected at the local level, which is great, but we don't emphasize it. So there's a huge disconnect there. And then we cheer when we get 3% in a statewide election, which is just so embarrassing.
But I have gotten personally so many people who are prominent influencers to change their position on the police. To me, that would be such a bigger win than 3% in some Senate election.
Absolutely.
Which even if you were the spoiler, like, okay, we got a Democrat elect instead of Republican or vice versa. In terms of a change on policy, that one Senate seat, maybe it's a butterfly effect thing, but as opposed to changing an entire ideology, Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire, who is as much of a social conservative as there is in prominent culture, who is not at all a libertarian, who is very much a right-wing statist in many ways, and I'm sure he'd admit this. He tweeted out last week, "Stop calling first responders heroes. They're doing their job." To me, this would have been an impossibility 3 years ago to have Matt Walsh say something like this publicly. So this seems like that would be a possibility for Libertarian Party wins, to have prominent names and prominent politicians to be advocating and adopting some of these policies. In 2015 or 2016, I would remind people, candidate Trump, Donald Trump said, "When I become president, I will audit the Fed by executive order within the 6 months." That never happened. This would have been a huge Libertarian Party win if they held their feet to the fire of either candidate and said, okay, even if we got 30% of this election, we got the Fed audited. This is and by doing so, we made the population aware that the Fed even exists to begin with,
Right.
let alone its machinations. But that seems like such an obvious opportunity as well.
Yeah, it's just perpetual whiff the ball. We can't ever hit anything serious. And it's like, because they won't, it's like we hide our goals and our purpose sort of in this mental fog. We don't want to come to terms with what our original purpose was because it makes us uncomfortable. So we'll just sort of keep doing things that sound liberty leaning, but that we're comfortable with. So we can condemn bigotry because we want everybody of every color to be free. So we'll condemn mean thoughts and mean words. And then if a policy comes up that's related to that, then we'll jump on that. But anything that's really controversial is just too scary and we just can't touch it. And the Fed, well, that could hurt Beltway moderates and centrists. So we don't want to offend them. We're just paralyzed by like low self-esteem.
I like, of all the things that get me angry in politics, and there's a lot, like inflation is a big one.
Yeah.
Because inflation to me means that mom who can't is like food scarcity is an issue for her. Now it's a really big issue for her.
Yeah.
And when you're very poor, and my family were immigrants, I don't know what that's like as an adult to be that level of poor. When you lose 10% of your money, that is the difference between like, okay, am I going to take a cab or the bus? I don't have that hour. Can I afford to pay that nanny? Can I just go take my kid to the movies? I'm going to sound like a complete commie, but I would want a country where every kid goes to movies once in a while. And just because they're desperately poor, that they shouldn't have that taken away from them because all their friends do. And inflation is what takes that away from like the poorest of the poor. And that really gets me absolutely enraged. And this is an obvious opportunity for the Libertarian Party to fight for the causes of inflation, which is the Federal Reserve and the crazy spending by both parties. And how are they leaving that money on the table?
It's just, it's beyond me. I mean, I've got all these theories about it, but it's been really kind of like humiliating to watch them drop the ball so badly over the last couple of years. And this is another thing that really will resonate with women, because women do most of the grocery shopping for their families. And if you're like I grew up pretty poor. My dad was a minister. We ate store brand food. My dad did the best he could and made the most of it. And we weren't on food stamps ever, but we ate store brand food for every meal. And what that really tells you is like a 6, 10, 12% change in income. Like we're like, what are we going to eat tonight? Is it going to be pancakes for every meal?
And that's the other thing. Like kids are smarter than people realize.
Yeah.
And when all your friends are eating Lucky Charms and you're eating Lucky Stars, and I'm showing my age here, your friends have He-Man and you have He-Guy, the Chinese knockoff, and the paint doesn't match his eyes and whatever.
Yep.
Like you feel like a loser as a kid.
Yeah.
And it gets to you. And this is something that inflation inflames. And it's really just politics at its absolutely most reprehensible and despicable. And then when you have people like Colbert getting on, I'm getting worked up, getting on TV and saying, I'm happy to pay more for gas because this is for Ukraine. Yeah, it's easy for you with your paycheck. It's not that easy for people who are the poorest of the poor.
Right. Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's just, it's an insult to injury with the let them eat cake attitude,
Yeah.
which we should also be capitalizing on in the Libertarian Party. That's a golden moment, is to shame and ridicule these people who are basically saying F you to poor people. And then we miss that one as well.
And it's, historically and ostensibly, the Democrats or the left are the party of the poor people. And I think with regard to when Clinton came around, at least, it very much tried to shift toward this middle class bougie kind of mindset. And that's another big opportunity for libertarians to be like, yeah, like we actually share your concerns. This isn't you just whining. Like you are having real issues that both parties are completely ignoring. And this is how libertarianism would help you and make sure you have more security in your family and as a person.
Yes, but I think that over the past at least 5 years, the Libertarian Party has shown contempt for poor people, especially poor. Well, there's no messaging on any issue that would seriously impact the lives of a poor Midwesterner. None.
Right.
The only issues that we might talk about would be that they have talked about police reform, which I appreciate, but we only talk about it in the context of urban communities because it's a hot button issue that coastal elites will also glom onto. Like there's no outreach, there's no issues that affect Midwestern people or working class people or Rust Belt people that the Libertarian Party wants to champion. It's just not the case.
Angela, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview? Probably
talking about inflation. So I really hate central banking a whole lot. And that's what really gave me the worldview imploding moment and path into like really learning about libertarianism.
You are welcome.